Greetings, Africa FM listeners. This is Widad Allaoua with your Pan-African news appointment. In an official invitation from Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, General Abdurrahman Tiani, President of Niger, begins a 2-day visit to Algeria at the head of a high-level delegation. The visit comes amid a period marked by a visible rapprochement between Algiers and Niamey. In recent weeks, political exchanges have intensified and bilateral consultations have gained momentum. Joining us in the studio, Yasmin Ben Ashur, to provide us with more details on this. Hello, Yasmin.
Hello, Widad.
Yasmin, Niger and Algeria witness a new era of good diplomatic relations. What are the indications on this, Yasmin?
As you know, Widad, the President of Niger, Abdurrahman Tiani, begins a 2-day visit to Algeria at the invitation of the President Abdelmajid Tebboune. The visit aims to strengthen friendship, cooperation, and good Nairobi relations, and to discuss political issues in Africa and the Sahel. The visit comes after both countries decided to return their ambassadors, showing that they will rebuild strong ties. Hakim Bougrara, expert and professor in international affairs, talks. Let's listen.
Continuing the distinguished relations that existed earlier and which have taken on very significant dimensions in the energy sectors, Algeria has undertaken many investments in Niger. It also relies on Niger to ensure the success of the Nigol project to transport gas from Nigeria through Niger and Algeria in a way that serves the interests of both countries and safeguards the public interests of the Sahel region and the Mediterranean area, while promoting development that positively impacts the lives of citizens in Niger, Nigeria, and Algeria.
Energy cooperation is a key topic. Sonatrach plans to resume work at the Kafra oil field, and both sides are discussing the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project. The recent visit of Algeria's Energy Minister Mohamed Arqab to Niger also helped bring the two countries closer and prepare the ground for deeper cooperation. Both leaders reaffirmed their commitment to stability, partnership, and economic development in the region.
Thank you, Yasmin, for your insights.
Thank you, Widad.
In Addis Ababa, the 39 African Union Summit closes today under the theme ensuring the availability of safe water and sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. A series of reports were presented, including the annual report of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, as well as reports related to Agenda 2063, in addition to the major continental initiatives led by the African Development Bank. More details with Iman Nouad, our special envoy in Addis Ababa.
A historic milestone for Africa. The 39th African Union Summit concluded today in Addis Ababa with the adoption of the Algiers Declaration on Colonial Crimes, marking a bold step toward justice and reparations across the continent. The declaration, stemming from the high-level international conference hosted by Algeria previously during November 30th, December 1st, 2025, emphasizes recognizing colonialism as a crime against humanity and some acts during slavery, forced displacement, and colonization as a genocide. It also designates November 30 as a African Day of Remembrance, honoring martyrs and victims of the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and apartheid. It is worthy to note that yesterday's session saw key interventions highlighting Africa's priorities, as President Tebboune underlined the continent's need for fair representation in the UN Security Council, stronger coordination on security and political challenges, and support for sustainable development initiatives, including water and climate issues. With today's adoption of Algiers Declaration, the 39th AU Summit concludes, reaffirming Africa's unity, its commitment to historical justice, and its resolve to shape a fairer future for all its people. Africa FM's envoy to the AU, Iman Nouad, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf concludes the summit with addressing the final communique. The summit emphasizes the urgent need to accelerate institutional and structural reforms in the management of peace and security, economic governance, and trade, noting that without transforming these mechanisms, it will be difficult to achieve the expected deliverables of Agenda 2063. Those implementation is structured around the successive 10 years plan. Mahmoud Ali Yusuf.
And as a side event, there were almost 15 side events that have been organized during these 4 days of the 39 session of the summit. We had a forum of the business community. That was also something new, given the fact that the financing of our development programs becoming more and more challenging. It has been advised that we embark on a journey with our business community so that they also become a contributor to our development programs. And we had a forum as a side event in this building. The second side event, which is very important, was His Excellency the President said it was the launch of the theme of the year, water and sanitation. We know all about that. And then the third forum also was organized around how best we can strengthen our health structures. And I know that this is a big challenge for the continent, and the CDC has been very active, very instrumental in this particular sector, and so on and so forth. So the conference actually pinpointed the fact that the heads of state will have zero tolerance for unconstitutional or unconstitutional change of governments on our continent. The conference also underscored its determination to silence the guns. This is also a very important program if we contemplate to develop this continent and create the integration conditions for our countries. We need to silence the guns. We need peace on this continent. We need stability on this continent, and we have a program for that. And the conference really underscored the necessity and its determination to pursue the goal of silencing the guns. And finally, the conference also committed to support the reforms, because without reforming the way we are handling our security issue, peace issue, the way we are handling our economic challenges and trade-related affairs, I think it will be very difficult to reach the deliverables that we need to reach. And we all know that the Agenda 2063 is built on 5 pillars, which are the 10-year plan, and then divided in 5-year plans. And we launched the 2024-2028 5-year plan, and we would like to see better performance in terms of deliverables, the time frame of this 10-year plan.
Representing President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Prime Minister Sefi Gharieb participates in a meeting on the sidelines of the 39 African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, dedicated to examining the legal implications of recognizing colonialism as a crime against humanity and classifying certain practices linked to slavery, forced deportation, and colonial rule as acts of genocide, based on a study by the African Union Commission on International Law. Let's listen to Prime Minister Gharieb.
Drawing on its painful national experience of more than 130 years of brutal stellar colonialism, Algeria has affirmed its full readiness to place the documents, material evidence and reliable historical testimonies in its possession at the disposal of the competent African legal bodies within the framework of the mandate granted to my country alongside Togo, South Africa and Ghana to follow up on the implementation of Decision 934 as part of the African Union's thematic activist for 2025. Algeria, in cooperation with the African Union Commission, took the initiative to organize a high-level international conference on 13 November and 1 December 2025 under the theme Eradication Colonialism in Africa towards consolidating historical truth and criminalize colonialism. The in-depth discussions led to the adoption of the Algiers Code, which included a number of key recommendations, notably an appeal for the official recognition of colonial crimes, strengthened documentation of colonial atrocities and the preservation of Africa's historical memory, the restitution of looted cultural property, national archives and the human remains of colonial victims, and the affirmation of international responsibility for the profound environmental and economic damage caused by colonial policies on the African continent.
And President Tebboune, once again on the sideline of the African Summit, ensures a safe and successful transition for South Sudan to its next phase, requires a firm commitment to several key pillars. Sefi Gharieb.
From this perspective, we emphasize the fundamental pillars that we consider essential to ensure the safe transition of our brotherly South Sudan to the next phase. First, the necessity of dialogue and inclusivity. We firmly believe that dialogue remains the only viable political path to establishing lasting peace in South Sudan. Therefore, We strongly encourage all parties that have signed the revitalized agreement, as well as non-signatory groups, to adopt an inclusive approach in all preparatory electoral processes. Comprehensive dialogue represents a vital gateway for all stakeholders and must be representative, genuine and constructive, aiming to overcome disagreements and unify visions regarding the country's future. In this context, we highly value the initiative put forward by our brotherly Republic of South Africa in its capacity as chair of the Troika Group to host a political dialogue among the parties that have signed the revitalized agreement. We also urge all relevant parties to engage actively and positively in this initiative. Second, a clear electoral roadmap in preparation for the upcoming milestones. We urge the government of South Sudan to develop a practical and precise roadmap, including realistic and specific timelines for the stages of the electoral process. The success of this historic milestone necessarily requires creating the proper conditions for free, fair and transparent elections, enabling the true will of the South Sudanese people to be sincerely expressed. Third, addressing security challenges and unifying forces. The matter of security arrangements remains a cornerstone in building trust and lasting stability.
On his part, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres describes the absence of permanent seats for Africa on the Security Council as unacceptable, emphasizing that by 2026 the continent should be fully involved in decisions that affect it. Guterres.
The absence of permanent African seats in the Security Council is indefensible. This is 2026, not 1946. Whatever decisions about Africa and the world are on the table, Africa must be at the table. Excellencies, these priorities inform the Pact for the Future, shaped by African leadership and the UN80 initiative to strengthen UN support to Africa and beyond. Looking ahead, we continue to have three major areas of focus. First, peace. In Sudan, the parties must commit to an immediate cessation of hostilities and resume talks towards a lasting ceasefire and comprehensive, inclusive and Sudanese-owned political process. In South Sudan, the EU's high-level ad hoc committee provides an important chance to revive political dialogue and prevent renewed conflict.
Mauritania's Minister of Energy and Petroleum, Mohammed Ould Khalid, begins a two-day working visit to Algeria, accompanied by a high-level delegation, including senior officials from the Mauritanian Hydrocarbons Company, SMH, the Mauritanian Electricity Company, Somelec, and the Mauritanian Refining Company, Somer, as well as ministry executives. The visit comes as part of efforts to strengthen the long-standing brotherly relations between Algeria and Mauritania and to advance bilateral partnership, particularly in hydrocarbons and energy sectors. Niger's Electoral Commission sets the 20th February 2027 as the date for the presidential and parliamentary elections, while 6th March 2027 is scheduled for the governorship elections. The United Nations states that the Rapid Support Forces committed and continuing to commit large-scale atrocities in Sudan's Al-Fashir, including massacres, summary executions, sexual violence, abductions, and torture. At least 4 people confirmed killed in Mozambique after Cyclone Gizani, whose winds reached about 215 kilometers per hour, struck the country days after causing dozens of deaths and widespread destructions in neighboring Madagascar. The storm inflicted heavy damage on Inhambane, the largest and most cyclone-prone city in southern Mozambique. Shifting to economy, in a message to the AU summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping announces a radical move: the application of zero tariff treatment for all African countries maintaining diplomatic ties with China. This measure will take full effect on May this year. Beijing is committing to further opening its green channel to facilitate African exports. More details with Isaiah Natokonda.
This move fundamentally reshapes the economic relationship between China and Africa. Starting 1st May 2026, China will eliminate import tariffs on every product from 53 African countries that maintain diplomatic ties with Beijing. In practical terms, that means duty-free access to the Chinese market, a privilege that was previously limited mainly to the least developed nations. By covering 100% of tariff lines, Beijing is offering broader access than any other major trade programs, including the US African Growth and Opportunity Act framework, which applies eligibility conditions and product limitations. But this goes beyond tariffs. China is expanding its so-called Green Channel, a fast-track customs system aimed particularly at African agricultural exports. Faster clearance at the Chinese ports would help products like fresh fruit, coffee, and processed foods reach customers more quickly and competitively. However, the ultimate impact will depend on the production capacity. Much of Africa's exports to China still consist of raw materials, minerals, and unprocessed agricultural goods, and to fully benefit from the zero tariffs, African economies would need to scale up manufacturing and increase value-added exports. In essence, China has opened the door to the world's largest consumer market, and the question now is whether African countries are ready to step through it.
Shifting to the cultural front, the 76th edition of the Berlin International Film Festival runs until 22 February. Known for its strong political tone, the festival continues its growing focus on African cinema, with 3 films shot on the continent competing this year for the Golden Bear, including Ala Kaf Frit by Tunisian director Leila Bouzid and Do by Senegalese filmmaker Aline Gomez. And concluding with sports, Algeria wins the African men's team title for the 5th time, while South Africa claims the women's crown at the championships in Botswana, with individual finals scheduled later today. The Association of National Olympic Committees of Africa, led by Algeria's Mustafa Berraf, says 2026 will be a landmark year for African sport, with the Dakar 2026 Summer Youth Olympics alongside expanded partnerships with the AOC and Asian Olympic bodies and scholarship programs ahead of Los Angeles 2028 Summer Olympics. This was Harvest of the Day, directed by Muad Bab Ahmed, the controlling board with Adlan, observation with Malika, and streaming service with Rania. Thank you for your attention. Join us again tomorrow, same time at 3 p.m. only at Ifriqiya FM.